common ways to save when repairing and servicing your car are to do it yourself as well as buying aftermarket parts. Some aftermarket parts can even be better than OEM parts or of similar or same quality. And some OEM parts are even poorly made from the box, brand new. You also have to be careful when purchasing quote-unquote OEM parts because some manufacturers out there are packaging aftermarket parts in OEM packages. Can you believe that? Ways of making money. And these aftermarket parts are usually of inferior qualities. So if you're going to buy OEM parts, it's always better to buy from an authorized dealer or sellers that are known to sell OEM parts. I've been talking about OEM parts, but OEM parts are simply original equipment manufacturer. This could mean that a manufacturer like Toyota actually make the parts themselves. It could also mean that a manufacturer other than Toyota makes the part for Toyota. These two categories are classified as OEM parts because these are the parts that the original manufacturer of a particular car company used. But for a company like Toyota to go into contract with a manufacturer, this manufacturer would have to be of a certain standard and quality because Toyota cannot afford for parts to fail. We have seen this in the past where manufacturers have recalls, and this is mainly because of a bad part. It costs manufacturers millions of dollars to do a recall, so they try to avoid this by any means necessary. So when you buy a genuine, and I mean genuine, OEM part, it's expected that it's gonna be of good quality and it gives a perfect fit. But this peace of mind of having a perfect fit comes at a cost. OEM parts cost way more than aftermarket parts, and it's for a good reason. In my opinion, there are some aftermarket parts that you should never buy unless the manufacturer can give evidence that these parts are better. Or maybe you want to make some modification to your car. Some people like to lower their car by buying aftermarket coilovers. But usually when an aftermarket part is better, it's gonna cost more than even the OEM part. So be mindful of aftermarket manufacturers claiming that their part is better than the OEM as well as cheaper. You want to be very suspicious of that manufacturer. But guess what? There are actually good aftermarket parts out there. There are not many. And to find those, you'll have to put in a lot of research. It takes time, but it can pay off in the long run. You can save some money. One of the best ways of learning about a part is from customer reviews. I have owned 2 Toyota motor vehicles in the past 3 years, and I do almost all repair and service jobs on these 2 vehicles. I have owned a 2011 Toyota Camry and I had to buy another car because that was totaled. Someone hit me in the back. And I now own a 2014 Toyota Highlander. I am going to do a detailed review on the Toyota Highlander very soon, so look out for that video. I do almost all jobs on my cars. I try to maintain my car very well. I am not a master mechanic. I am not able to work on engines like opening up an engine and rebuilding an engine and transmission. So I service my engine and transmission very regularly to keep it running as long as possible. I take my car to the garage for mainly 3 reasons. Firstly, to get my transmission service. Toyota made it very difficult to refill the transmission oil at the correct level. So I take it to the transmission specialist. What he does, he would replace the filter inside and refill. Costs more, but I'm telling you, it's worth it. I'm gonna put a link in the description below of a video I did explaining how to keep a transmission running forever. The second reason I would take my car to the garage is to do wheel alignment. I obviously do not have an alignment machine. It's very expensive. And the third thing I would take my car to the garage for is to replace tires. All repair of tires I've been doing myself, like plugging a hole. And I also have a video as to how to safely plug a tire. I have done many repair jobs on my motor cars, and I started out buying aftermarket parts, and I have learned a valuable lessons. I hope that you can learn from my mistake. There are many aftermarket parts out there that are good enough to replace an OEM part. The common ones are like brake pads, brake rotor, windscreen wipers, interior and exterior body panels, headlights, battery, those type of parts. They do not take a lot of work to replace. But there are some aftermarket parts that you should really try and avoid. So think about it. Think about parts on your car that to replace takes a lot of work and a lot of time. Those jobs are like replacing a fuel pump, replacing the wheel bearing. Some cars, to replace the lower control arm, like on a Toyota, you have to actually lift the engine off the frame to replace that control arm. Those jobs are big jobs. So for those jobs, you want to buy genuine parts, because you don't want those parts to fail and have to do them again, especially if you're a do-it-yourselfer. And those jobs usually cost a lot to do at the garage. You need to be mindful that some OEM parts are of poor quality. So for some manufacturer, it doesn't matter if you buy the OEM part or the aftermarket part, it's going to be bad. So this is when research on a part is very important. And this is one of the reasons aftermarket part can be better. And to get a good aftermarket part, sometimes you have to spend more money than it would cost to buy the OEM. I have made some videos of some aftermarket parts that I've purchased and installed that failed very soon after. I will put the link for those videos in the description below. I recommend watching those videos to see how a part can fail even out of the box. And one of the common parts to fail out of the box are struts. Those quick struts that you purchase online for very cheap can be a disaster. The best way to replace a strut is to buy the shock only and keep the spring and the bearing. You can check the bearing to see if it's bad. So now I'm going to talk about some specific advantages and disadvantages of OEM part versus aftermarket part. The first and most obvious reason for going aftermarket part is the cost. Aftermarket parts can cost way cheaper, and sometimes you can be lucky to find an aftermarket part that is very cheap, fits perfectly, and of OEM quality. And the two main disadvantages of the aftermarket part are that it might not fit perfectly. It's likely to not fit perfectly, and it's also likely to not last very long. So you want to bear that in mind. Now for OEM parts, it is expected for OEM parts to fit perfectly and very durable. The disadvantage of OEM part is that it can be very expensive, especially for luxury cars. Also, OEM part could be of poor quality out of the box. It's possible that the OEM part doesn't fit very well, and it's also possible for the OEM part to fail prematurely. So when you're trying to decide whether or not to purchase OEM part versus aftermarket part, think about how long it took before you need to change that part. Look at the amount of miles driven and the time it took for that part to break, and think about what the cost is for the OEM part and ask yourself if it's worth it. Say you have a part like a strut that lasts 8 years. 8 years. That's a very long time. It could be maybe 170,000 miles. It would be worth it to purchase a strut of that same quality that you would not need to think about again for another 8 years or 150,000 miles. You can buy an aftermarket strut that fails out of the box. One of the most common signs of a bad aftermarket strut is knocking. If you change a strut and you started to hear knocking, just check again to see if there's any loose nuts or bolts. If it's all tight, it is the strut. I have had that experience where I purchased a pair of strut from a dealer. I'm gonna put a link to their website below. And out of the box, the strut was bad. I emailed them and let them know. They sent me to a garage for them to confirm. I did, they confirmed. They sent me a set of strut, brand new strut, and after installing the other set, same knocking was there. It's after I bought some Monroe strut, the noise was gone. And I'm gonna put a link in the description below when I install those struts. So as I said earlier, a big challenge is getting actual OEM part, because there are some manufacturers out there that label aftermarket part as OEM part, and that is why I only purchase from a known, like, authorized dealer. The dealer I purchase parts from is all the way in Pennsylvania. I'm in Wisconsin. I have gone to dealers here in Wisconsin that I can go and pick up the part, no shipping cost, and it's still more expensive than buying it from the dealer in Pennsylvania, and I can guarantee that the parts are genuine OEM. So if you own a Toyota and you want to buy from this dealer, I'm gonna put a link to their website in the description below. Thank you for watching my video, and check out the other videos in the description below that give specific detail on some aftermarket parts that you really do not want to buy unless you do good research and get customer review. I'm asking for your support to like and subscribe, and also don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you can be notified whenever I upload a new video. Walk good, my friend. Walk good.